One quiet spring afternoon in the peaceful town of Willow Creek, Oregon, Margaret Ellis was trimming lavender by her wraparound porch. The breeze carried the scent of pine and wildflowers from the nearby hills, and the soft chirping of birds filled the air. Her golden retriever, Benny, dozed lazily at her feet, only occasionally opening one eye to watch a squirrel dash across the yard. Suddenly, a strange, sharp cry rang out from the direction of the woods behind her house. It wasn't a usual bird call, it sounded more like a distressed shriek. Benny immediately perked up and let out a low bark, his ears raised. Margaret's hands froze. She set the shears down and followed the sound, Benny bounding ahead with tail wagging anxiously. The sound came again, clearer this time, filled with fear and urgency. They made their way through the tall grass and reached a clearing by the edge of the woods. That's where Margaret saw it, a young falcon, barely more than a fledgling, soaked from the heavy rains the night before. Its feathers were matted and slick, and it stood awkwardly, as if unsure how to use its legs. The bird's wings drooped, and its chest heaved with shallow breaths. Benny stopped a few feet away and sat down, sensing the delicate nature of the moment. Margaret approached slowly, crouching low so she wouldn't scare the bird. The falcon turned its golden eyes toward her, wide, full of caution, but also quietly pleading. "Hey there," she whispered softly. "You're all right now." Gently, Margaret laid down a towel she had brought from the porch. With patient, careful hands, she scooped the bird into the fabric. The falcon didn't fight. Its body trembled, but it made no attempt to flee. It was exhausted, vulnerable, and perhaps, somewhere deep inside, it sensed that Margaret was trying to help. Back inside her house, Margaret placed the falcon in a box lined with blankets. She retrieved a small hair dryer and set it to the lowest, warmest setting. Slowly, she dried its feathers, being extra cautious near its face and wings. The falcon blinked at her, unmoving but alert. After that, she offered it a small plate with softened chicken and bits of scrambled egg, unsure if it would eat. The falcon hesitated for a long time, then leaned forward and pecked gently at the food. It chewed slowly, like a child unsure about a new taste. Margaret smiled to herself. That tiny movement was a sign of hope. She decided to name the bird Ash, after the stormy gray shade of its feathers. That first night, Ash slept in a box beside Margaret's bed. Every so often, she would wake up and see the bird looking at her silently. As the hours passed, Ash seemed to settle, its breathing becoming steady. Over the next few days, Margaret devoted herself to caring for the falcon. She read articles and watched videos about bird rehabilitation. She even called a wildlife center in Eugene for advice. They told her she could keep Ash temporarily as long as he wasn't showing signs of distress or aggression, and as long as she wasn't trying to domesticate him. That was never her goal. She didn't see Ash as a pet. He was a visitor, a soul in need of rest. Each morning, she would carry Ash out to the porch in his box. There, beneath the sunlight, he would stretch his wings. At first, they barely lifted. But little by little, he began to flap. The first time he managed to lift himself a foot off the ground, Margaret clapped her hands in delight. Benny barked once, as if cheering too. Ash spent his days perched on the window ledge or a special branch Margaret placed in the living room. He didn't seem afraid of humans. Sometimes, when Margaret sat reading, he would hop closer, observing her with intense curiosity. At night, he always returned to his box and slept soundly. Word began to spread around Willow Creek. The mailman caught a glimpse of the bird through the front window. The local librarian, a friend of Margaret's, brought her nephew over to visit. Soon, people began stopping by to see the Falcon Lady. Margaret didn't mind. She was happy to educate anyone who asked questions, especially children. She often said, "Ash isn't mine. He's just passing through." As spring turned into summer, Ash grew stronger. His feathers regained their shine, and he could now fly in short bursts from one end of the yard to the other. He'd often soar up into the old oak tree, sit for an hour, then come back down to Margaret's outstretched arm. Their connection was silent but deep. She didn't speak to him much, there was no need. He understood her. One day, a photographer from the Willow Creek Weekly asked to do a short feature. Margaret agreed, a little reluctantly. She posed with Ash perched on her shoulder, Benny sitting loyally by her side. The article was titled, "Wings of Kindness, the Falcon of Willow Creek." It quickly became the town's favorite story. Inspired by Margaret, the town council proposed an annual community event, Wild Friends Day, to honor acts of compassion toward animals and nature. Margaret and Ash were the first guests of honor. At the event, children wore paper wings and shared drawings of their favorite wild animals. A local poet read verses about birds and forests. And when Margaret stepped up to speak, Ash flew a wide circle above the crowd before landing on her shoulder. She simply said, "All living things deserve our patience, our help, and our love. Even the smallest kindness can lift wings that were too tired to fly." The audience stood in respectful silence. Some had tears in their eyes. That evening, as the stars began to appear over Willow Creek, Margaret sat on her porch again. Ash was beside her, his head gently leaning against her shoulder, while Benny rested at her feet. She looked up at the sky, grateful for the strange twist of fate that brought the falcon into her life. In the following weeks, Ash began flying farther and staying away longer. Margaret knew the time was coming. He was a wild creature, and his place was out there, in the skies and forests. One morning, just as the sun broke over the hills, Ash took off from the garden and soared higher than ever before. He circled once, twice, and then disappeared beyond the trees. Margaret didn't cry. She only whispered, "Thank you." But as if he had heard her, Ash returned later that evening, just for a moment, to perch on her porch railing before vanishing into the dusk again. From that day on, he returned now and then, always briefly, like a wandering friend checking in. And each time, Margaret welcomed him back with the same quiet joy. In Willow Creek, the story of Margaret and Ash became more than a tale, it became a gentle legend about what it means to care, to trust, and to let go. Dear friend, thank you so much for watching our story. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support the channel.